Exposed. 9 spine-chilling ghosts caught on camera. Terrifying paranormal activity revealed. Sarah shook off the chill creeping up her spine as she stepped inside the dimly lit hallway of her small Westerville home. Shadows flickered like whispers against the walls, ominous figures dancing in the corners of her tired eyes. Just hours ago, she'd been slinging greasy fries and pouring cups of coffee at the diner, her laughter drowned out by the routine chatter of weary customers. Now she was surrounded by silence. The kind of silence that clung to her skin, making every breath feel heavy. Her heart raced as she glanced over at the sofa, where her 2 kids Danny and Lily lay sound asleep, their soft breaths breaking the stillness. But she couldn't shake the feeling that something was lurking just out of sight. Days turned into restless nights, each one thicker with an unspeakable tension. Flickering lights became the norm, cold spots brushed against her skin like icy fingers. Danny's innocent question about a ghost in the hallway hit her hard. "Just your imagination," she'd murmured, but in the back of her mind, she wrestled with the unsettling notion that he might be right. Lily would giggle at nothing, talking to someone who was definitely not there. Sarah's pulse quickened, dread gnawing at her gut. On a night thick with unease, she decided to uncover the truth. Digging through the musty attic, Sarah unearthed yellowed newspaper clippings. Her hands trembled as she read about a series of disappearances from their neighborhood years ago. Her neighbor, Mr. Thompson, a friendly figure who helped her time and again, had once lived in the heart of the terror. Could it be? She fought against disbelief but couldn't ignore the breathable fog of fear. Each new article revealed more chilling coincidences, the kind of skin-crawling discoveries that knit cold dread into her soul. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Driven into action, Sarah set up her phone in the living room, filming in the dim light, hoping for anything to happen. At first, the screen captured nothing but shadows and dim furniture, but then the air changed. She felt it, a thickening of the atmosphere before her heart stopped cold. There it was, a glimpse of a ghostly child, translucent and wide-eyed, darting through the frame. Panic surged through her, tightening her throat. Was this child lost? Or was there something darker in their midst? An insistent knocking shattered her thoughts. Heart racing, she jolted her camera to the window where Mr. Thompson stood, silhouetted against the porch light. Something in his smile felt off, stretched, jagged at the edges. The hairs on her arms prickled. She thought of the photos sent to her phone, her children's innocent laughter captured from the neighbor's porch. Realization slammed into her. The danger wasn't just a ghost, it was the man standing at her door. Was someone watching her? Or had she let a wolf into the fold? As the door creaked open, pouring dread into her home, Sarah's breath hitched. The atmosphere felt charged, electric. Could she protect Danny and Lily, or would she have to confront the horror lurking behind their smiles? The shadows deepened, and she steeled herself, desperate to face whatever nightmare awaited her. A chilling silence fell over her world, wrapping around her like a shroud of impending doom. The door swung wide, revealing Mr. Thompson, but the warmth she once felt from him had vanished. His eyes, usually kind, glinted like wet stones. "Sarah," he drawled, his voice low and smooth, "I noticed your lights flickering. I thought I'd check on you." She could only nod, her throat dry. She caught a glimpse of his hands, pale and bony, twitching slightly at his sides. An instinctual fear pulsed through her veins, urging her to slam the door and lock it tight. But she held her ground, every nerve ending firing with alarm. "Is everything all right?" he asked, stepping closer, the air growing heavy with each passing moment. The fluorescent light flickered above them, complementing the growing shadows that seemed to stretch and claw toward him. She glanced back towards the children, their peaceful slumber a fragile shield against the darkness enveloping them. Yeah. Just, trying to get my lights fixed. You know how it is. Her voice trembled involuntarily. Mr. Thompson's smile broadened, but it didn't reach his eyes. You shouldn't be alone at night. It's dangerous. A chill slithered down her spine. There was a tone of threat hidden beneath his gentle facade. I could help you, he continued, a predatory glint flashing. Sarah's heart raced. She was aware now, far too aware, that while she was alone in her home, she was not alone in this world. Not with him standing there, cloaked in the guise of a neighborly protector. I appreciate it, Mr. Thompson, but I'm fine. Really, she replied, stepping back cautiously, trying to signal she didn't want him to enter. He tilted his head, and the shadows pressed closer, enveloping him. You know, sometimes it's those closest to you that turn out to be the most dangerous. Your children. He licked his lips slowly, savoring the words. They don't know about the history of this neighborhood, do they? History? She spat out without thinking, battling the nausea rolling in her stomach. What history? She fought to maintain her composure, hoping to steer the conversation away from her children. Disappeared without a trace, he said, his voice dripping with calm assurance. People don't realize, Sarah. Evil doesn't always come with a scream. Sometimes it's just a whisper in the dead of night. Just like those children. Each word felt like a dagger driving deeper into her gut, the implications heavy and suffocating. Panic surged as his voice faded into the background noise, creating a cacophony of blurred shadows and flickering lights. Danny. Lily. She shouted, breaking free from her frozen state. But in that moment of tension, she noticed his smile morph into something twisted. His demeanor shifted instantly, betrayed by a flicker of something sinister. Don't scream, he warned softly, his voice now a sibilant whisper. Then, the lights blinked out completely. Darkness plunged around them, threatening to choke the last of her courage. Sarah scrambled backward, her pulse thundering as her instinct screamed at her to shield her children. Frantic, she grasped the door frame but could not move. Stay still, Mr. Thompson's voice slithered through the pitch-dark air, a serpent ready to strike. Or you want to like what happens next. Heart pounding, she dared to look up again. In the murky shadows, she swore she could see movement and outline shifting, moving just at the edge of her vision, slipping away like smoke. Was it the ghost she had filmed? Or something worse? Panic rose as she clutched her phone tightly, praying for light, praying for her children. It felt like an eternity spent in suffocating darkness. Suddenly, a soft giggle burst through the silence, the sweet sound of Lily, followed by Danny's wonderment. Mommy. They chimed in unison. With that word, the darkness became a battlefield between the eerie calm and the rising dread. The shadows waited, ready to pounce, as Sarah's hand tightened around her phone, knowing she had to act before it consumed them all. What would happen when she flicked the light back on? Would she see the truth? Or unleash something she wasn't prepared to face? As dread settled back into her core, a low growl echoed from the depths of the night. What else was hiding in the dark? And who or what had been watching them? She squeezed her eyes shut, and the darkness seemed to pulse around her, alive and hungry. The sound of Lily's giggle, once comforting, now rang hollow under the weight of Mr. Thompson's words. Just a whisper, he had said. And in this all-consuming blackness, whispers echoed louder than screams. Danny. Lily. Come here. Her voice cracked, desperation pouring out of her like a flood. But shadows clung to the corners of her living room, threatening to swallow the children whole if they dared to stray too far. She fumbled with the phone in her trembling hand, her fingers slick with sweat as she pressed the button, praying for the light to pierce through the abyss. Nothing. Panic clawed at her throat. Mommy. Are we playing hide and seek? Danny's voice was innocent, untainted, but she felt her heart stutter. Every word echoed strangely, distorted. Get over here now. She screamed, fear choking her already strained voice. Okay. The giggles were still there, but they sounded wrong. Almost mocking. She tried again, tapping the button, still no light. It was as if something was actively suppressing the glow, conspiring against her sanity. The shadows swirled at the edges of her vision, and she realized she needed to do something. Anything. "Mr. Thompson." She called out, trying to draw him back into the light. "Get away from my children." But his response was a silence laden with intent, heavy like an iron weight. Sarah could feel her breath coming in short gasps, the world narrowing down to just her and the darkness. Suddenly, the air shifted. A noise, low and engulfing, rumbled through the room like distant thunder or the growl of an unseen beast. Sarah's skin prickled as adrenaline surged. The shadows around her were in motion, twisting, chasing after something, or someone. The giggles stopped abruptly, replaced by a low whimpering. For the first time, an edge of fear crept into Lily's voice. "Mommy," it's cold. The very call of her child wrapped around her heart like a vice. "Lily. Danny. I'm coming." She stumbled forward, arms outstretched, finally breaking the invisible barrier that had kept her from moving. In the pitch void of her living room, she felt her way through the room like a blindfolded moth, instinct guiding her. Her hand brushed against the sofa, and she pulled herself up, the fabric cool and reassuring under her palm. "I'm right here," she whispered, though the tremor betrayed her. Then a sudden too-close whisper curled in her ear, soft and mocking. "You shouldn't have done that, Sarah." She spun around, eyes wide, searching for the source. A chill wound through her, freezing her blood. The air thickened with an oppressive presence, closing around her like a trap. "You've awakened them," it hissed. "They were always here," a voice slithered from the darkness. Mr. Thompson's form materialized, looming with an uncanny smoothness, his pale face resembling a mask embracing a predator. "Look closely," he murmured, eyes glimmering like shards of ice. In that heartbeat before light flooded the room, Sarah saw the shadows shifting into grotesque figures, each one transplanting memories of the children she had loved, twisting into horrific shapes and smiling far too wide, their faces blending with every horror story she had ever heard. And just like that, the lights flickered back to life, plunging Sarah into a nightmare she was not prepared for. Before her, the living room was sealed tight, the children were gone, and the walls now dripped with whispers of an unspeakable truth. The shadows had teeth and eyes, watching, waiting, and they weren't finished. "What have you done?" was the last thing Mr. Thompson said, before Sarah's knees buckled beneath her, and all she could hear were those echoes of laughter growing louder, hungry, surrounding her, all urging her to join them in their dance of despair. As the lights began to dim again, she realized with horror that the shadows lurked within her, and she had no way to fight back. What terror awaited her in the darkness? Would she fall into the embrace of the things lurking there? Or could she pull her children back from the brink? The whispers folded into a chorus, each voice layered with fear, echoing inside her mind. Sarah's heart raced, thudding like a war drum. Where were her children? Her breath hitched as she felt the dampness against her skin, not from sweat but from the creeping shadows that lengthened across the room, reaching for her like skeletal hands. "Danny. Lily." She croaked, panic clawing deeper into her chest. Silence swallowed their names, and that silence was worse than any scream. It felt as if the walls themselves absorbed her cries, as if the house had grown fangs, hungry for her despair. The shadows shifted again, pulsing with a life of their own as if they were drawing strength from her fear. The once familiar wooden floors now seemed to rumble beneath her feet, vibrating with anger, a house alive and well aware of the thing it had become. "Mommy." The voice broke through the dark, a faint echo that sent a jolt of thunder through Sarah's veins. It was Danny, but it sounded distorted, like it was fired through a wall of static. "Help." She sprinted toward the voice, limbs trembling but fueled by sheer desperation. Her hands brushed against the wall, and she pressed her body against it, forcing herself down the hallway. Flickering lights overhead cast eerie shadows, making her jump at every shiver of movement, every stretch of darkness that loomed ahead. "Danny. Lily." The call felt futile, like a cry in a void. Doubt sunk into her chest like a stone, dragging her down. What if they were really gone? Suddenly, a whisper swept by, cold and sharp like ice. "They're here. They're lost." The voice slithered around her, ringing true with an unsettling familiarity. What had Mr. Thompson meant? What had she awakened? Just as she buried the thought, Danny's laughter rang out again, mirthless and strained, like a toy left buried in the mud. She paused, planting her feet. Was it coming from a closet? Closing her eyes, she strained to hear, cringing as her heart threatened to burst from the silence that was closing in on her. "Mommy." The voice, clearer now, brought forth a glimmer of hope. She threw open the closet door, her breath caught as it creaked ominously, revealing a hollow darkness, a gaping maw waiting just for her. With courage she didn't know she had, Sarah stepped inside, the air thick and stale. The cold seeped into her bones, and in the darkness, she felt a chill settle deep into her core. Then she saw it a flicker, a small light dancing at the back. Lily. She pushed forward, feeling pushed and pulled, not just by the shadows but by an unknown will, a force that yearned to ensnare her. As she neared, she spotted a figure entwined in shifting darkness, tiny hands reaching out. But before she could grasp it, the light vanished, leaving behind a flurry of darkness and a scream. "No!" Sarah screeched, stumbling back, her heart pounding wildly in her chest. The shadows morphed, swirling like a storm, and Mr. Thompson's face twisted above her, grinning beneath a veil of shadows. "Do you see?" he crooned, every word laced with a venomous glee. "They're never coming back." The walls vibrated with his sinister laughter, echoing within her mind, twisting her heart. With an urgency born of despair, she gripped the sides of her head, wanting to silence the horror creeping in. But the laughter didn't stop. Instead, it grew louder, resonating against the silence that birthed her nightmares. She could feel hands clutching at her ankles, whispering awful things in her ears. What if the shadows were right? What if she could never reclaim her children from this madness? Suddenly, the lights burst back on, flooding the closet with blinding white. A figure stood behind Mr. Thompson, a blur of white and gold, and then it was gone. Had she just imagined it? Or was that a glimmer of hope? She blinked, despair battling against the flicker of determination inside her. "What have you done?" Mr. Thompson thundered again, his anger sparking like a live wire. "You're no longer in control." As darkness pooled around Sarah, she could feel the weight of the shadows pressing against her, seeking to drown her. Dread clawed at her heart as the laughter crescendoed into a haunting symphony, sinister and haunting. Would she lose herself in this chaotic sea of darkness? Or could she wrestle away the sinister grip of despair before it consumed her whole? The shadows whispered back, taunting her with memories and fears. The trap was closing in, and a jaw of darkness awaited her, a maw twisting wider, revealing rows of jagged teeth glinting in the light like sharpened knives. "What will you offer?" The shadows seemed to hiss, their rhythm pulsing with the beat of her heart. And in that moment of terror, standing on the brink of darkness, Sarah realized she had only just begun to wrestle with what lay ahead. What could she possibly sacrifice to save her children, and herself? The shadows recoiled like a spooked animal, the laughter abruptly snuffed out, leaving the air thick with tension. Sarah stumbled backward, her heart pounding against her ribcage as she fought the urge to scream. What had the darkness just shown her? "Mommy." Danny's voice shattered the silence again, pleading and desperate. It cut through the heavy air like a knife, forcing her to push past the shadows that still loomed, searching for him, for Lily. With trembling hands and burning determination, she ran from the closet, flinging herself into the narrow hallway. Each step echoed, merging with what felt like a heartbeat of the house itself. The walls pulsed, alive with a hunger that was far too familiar. "Danny!" she yelled, turning wild corners that seemed to twist and stretch unnaturally as she moved. The once warm and inviting home bore the sharp chill of a crypt. Then she heard it again, the laughter, tinged with mockery this time. It came from deeper in the house, like a cruel prank. Her breath came in short gasps, and still, she pressed on. "Mommy!" The cry morphed into a somber whisper, barely above a breath. Desperation warped her thoughts. What if they were playing hide and seek? An innocent game turned deadly in this cursed house. She laughed bitterly at the thought. This was not a game. Shadows pulsed like a living entity, eager to consume. She reached the living room, its furniture rearranged into impossible angles, like a mockery of a home. The television flickered, casting an unsettling glow that distorted the shadows, turning them into monstrous shapes, twisting and shivering with an energy of their own. Please, it was a sound barely audible, a flicker of something fragile. Her heart sank, as it brought all her fear into sharp focus, blending with the cold specter of the past that haunted the space. Lily! Sarah shouted into the room, though part of her was terrified that her child might materialize from the shadows only to vanish again. The air crackled with a tension that made the hairs on her arms stand on end. Just then, a chill swept through the room, making her gasp. The laughter returned, echoing all around her. This time, it wasn't just Danny. It felt as though a chorus of lost souls shared in the macabre delight. Look at her, all alone, a voice purred, sinister and low. No! She cried, slamming her hands over her ears, trying to block out the sound. But the whispers wormed their way through, burrowing deep. Where are you? She pressed against the walls, eyes wide, searching for any sign of her children, anything that would lead her to them. But the shadows danced around, urging her to succumb to the despair. Suddenly, a door creaked open at the far end, an abyss of darkness cascading out. An involuntary shiver raced down her spine. It was wrong. Something dreadful lurked within, but the faint outlines of figures flitted in and out of her vision, and she had no choice. She had to move forward. Danny! Lily! She yelled, her voice breaking, desperation chipping away at her resolve. She stepped closer, feeling the tug of an unseen force. The door beckoned, a twisted invitation to join what lay inside. With a deep breath, she took a step over the threshold, the shadows reaching out like icy fingers, grasping at her waist, sending jolts of fear through her. Then she saw them silhouetted figures at the end of the room, framed against the void. Danny and Lily stood there, backlit by the darkness. Their faces were obscured, but she could sense a terrible energy radiating between them, silent and charged. Mommy! They cried in unison, their small voices harmonizing into a symphony of uncanny despair, nightmarish and echoing through the icy air. Get away from them! Sarah's voice shattered, ringing with fury. For they weren't just innocent children anymore, they were tethered to the dark force that gripped the house, a force that wanted her to join them. Then the walls shuddered. The lights flickered. The house seemed to be collapsing in on itself, and in the chaos, a haunting truth washed over her. What if she had to be the sacrifice? The shadows clamored louder, a cacophony that threatened to drown her out. But just as despair threatened to swallow her whole, a flicker of light broke through the darkness, illuminating the figures momentarily. She saw their faces distorted, mouths stretched in a silent scream, eyes wide with terror. Mommy! Their cries morphed once more, becoming pleading as the ground beneath her began to tremble. In that moment of clarity, as dread surged with frantic intensity, Sarah realized she had to act, or she'd lose them forever. What was she willing to become to pull them back from the edge? The shadows collided, waylaying her thoughts, swirling like a tempest around her. Could she battle through the depths of despair, or was this an ending crafted by the very darkness holding them captive? The flickering light dimmed to a whisper, enveloped by the shadows that clamored as if they had a life of their own. Sarah felt a cold sweat trickle down her back, the urgency pounding in her temples. How could she save them when the darkness was clawing at her sanity? Danny! Lily! She screamed again, voice hoarse and desperate. Each name pulled her like a lifeline, but the same vein of dread coiled in her gut. What if calling them only drew them deeper into the abyss? The ground below her quaked, the very foundation of the house vibrating with some unseen horror. Shadows writhed around her ankles, tugging with icy fingers that seemed to stretch further with every heartbeat. She had to move, but fear paralyzed her like a deer caught in headlights. Before she could make a decision, the figures stepped forward, faces emerging from the darkness. Danny's sweet profile was marred with something she couldn't place. Fear? No, yes, something darker. Lily too, her eyes wide, too hollow for such a young child. Mommy! They shouted again, but now there was something strange in their tone. A blend of joy and an ache that screamed of longing. No, no, Sarah whispered, inching backward as a chilling clarity settled over her. Their cries were not just pleas, they were invitations. Invitations to join them in whatever cursed existence bound them to this house. The laughter roared back, overwhelming her senses, a cacophony of sinister delight rippling through the air. Join us, Sarah. Join us. Panic ignited her limbs, pushing her toward the wall, her pulse racing, pounding like a war drum. She couldn't let them down, couldn't succumb to the very thing that had already swallowed them. Don't come any closer. She shouted, her voice breaking as she dug her nails into the wooden frame of the door. In that moment, it felt like she was trapped in a nightmare where waking up would never be an option. Mommy, please. Danny's voice grew entwined with a wretched chorus of laughter that echoed around her in waves. The shadows surged as if feeding on her fear, pressing toward her like a tidal wave. Focusing on her children, Sarah felt the warmth of memories flood her mind, their laughter, their sleepy eyes, the way they clung to her when storms rolled in. I will not abandon you. She shouted, channeling her fear into rage, an anchor to her humanity against the encroaching dark. She swiveled toward the flickering light, her only ally in this battle. I'll fight for you. With renewed resolve, she pushed through the shadows, determined to break whatever hold they had over her children. As she moved closer to the figures, she felt another wave of that pulsing despair. It clawed at her from all directions, like tendrils wrapping around her heart, squeezing tighter with each advance. This isn't you. She cried, desperate to reach them. A brief flicker snatched her attention. The light momentarily flared, illuminating more of the room. Horror fused with clarity as she caught glimpses of other faces, twisted and gnashing, horrifying remnants of the lost souls. They were bound to the house just like Danny and Lily. Mommy! The cry shattered the space, layered with anguish, and in that moment she recognized something more potent. There was hope embedded in their pleas. With one last push, she reached for them, willing her body through the flood of shadows. But as her hands grasped for hers, a cold grip stole her breath away. The shadows recoiled, the laughter hushed, a moment frozen in time, an intimate standoff between love and terror. And then, in a heartbeat, they broke away. The shadows erupted, swirling in a cyclone of distorted faces, fading into a whisper of despair. Mommy! The voices of her children echoed, slipping from her grasp, beckoning her with a longing she could feel deep in her bones. No! She cried, feeling an incomprehensible force tearing at her resolve. She couldn't let this be the end. Corrupted laughter rang out, drowning her in a tidal wave of darkness. Not again, she breathed, terror crashing hard inside her. As shadows engulfed her vision, Sarah was left teetering on the precipice. Would she lose her children forever, or could she find a way to fight back against the encroaching dark? In that swirling mist, a whisper dripped from the shadows: sacrifice awaits. The world around Sarah blurred, the cacophony of distorted voices swirling into an inescapable tempest. Panic gripped her heart like a vice as the shadows tightened their hold. She could feel the chill seep through her skin, penetrating deep into her bones. The warmth of her children's memories dimmed to a flicker, replaced by the suffocating darkness. Sacrifice awaits. The voice had morphed into a growl, wrapping itself around her, squeezing tight. No! She yelled, adrenaline fueling her resolve. I won't give in. She pushed against the encroaching tide, forcing her feet into action. Breathless, she moved through the room, searching for any glimmer of hope, anything that might save her children. The shadows crept closer, their mocking laughter rising, echoing off the walls as if they were alive, pulsating with malevolence. The flickering light dimmed further, momentarily plunging her into near total darkness. In that instant, the oppressive silence weighed heavy. She held her breath, heart racing. Was this it? Would the darkness claim her too? Before she could process the thought, a sudden flare brightened the space around her, illuminating the room in a sickly yellow hue. The faces of the lost souls appeared again, writhing in agonized glee, their hollow eyes drinking in her fear. Sarah recoiled, terror shooting through her. "Join us, Sarah," they sang, a disturbing chorus. "No!" she screamed, shaking her head furiously. Clenching her fists, she turned toward the door. The familiar exit, stained with grief and heartbreak, beckoned. It was a thin line between this cursed house and the world outside, where the air would be alive with the smell of rain and serenity. But could she escape? "Danny! Lily!" she shouted, forcing her voice to rise above the malignant laughter. Suddenly, a sharp gasp broke through the chaos. She redirected her attention. Danny stood there, eyes wide, shimmering with fear, but something wasn't right. The innocence in his gaze felt eclipsed by something deeper, an understanding of the darkness that devoured him. "Mommy, don't leave us," his voice quivered. "Danny," she replied, her heart splintering. "I'm here. I will always be here." Lily appeared next to him, her small frame trembling as she reached out, the gesture filled with longing that nearly obliterated Sarah. "Mommy, please." Her tone held a fractured note, a blend of hope and sorrow. Glimmers of their former selves shone through the shadows, moments of warmth she knew existed within them. But they were fighting against an unseen force, something that twisted and distorted their voices into longing cries for help while simultaneously carrying the weight of something much darker. "Stay back. Don't move," Sarah cried, panic swirling anew. A violent gust swept through the room, extinguishing the light, and plunging everything into shadows once more. They surrounded her, tightening, wrapping her in an inescapable embrace, smothering her will to fight. Then she felt it a sudden release, the shadows momentarily recoiling as if taking a breath. An opportunity. Grasping at the fresh air, she bolted toward the last echo of light, where her children hovered. The distance seemed unending, a chasm filled with torment. "Please," she begged, extending her arms, desperation enveloping her every thought. "Let me reach you. Mommy." The cries melded into the sinister laughter, but beneath it flickered something fragile, a glimmer of love striving to break free. As she plunged forward, something sharp pierced her side, the shadows closing in like fangs ready to snap her pelvis. Dark fingers curled around her, pulling her back with a ferocious force, threatening to consume her completely. The laughter escalated into a symphony of chilling joy, the shadows dancing, taunting her, as if the house itself reveled in her anguish. She fought against them, her heart warring with doom, until suddenly, she felt the presence of a cold weight drop into her gut. "Mommy, you must choose." Danny's voice rang clear, sharper than the rest, cutting through the laughter. "A choice?" The realization hit her. And dread coiled tightly in her throat. "Choose," she whispered, horror dawning, her breath hitching. A chilling voice echoed from the darkness. Sacrifice awaits. With overwhelming fear coursing through her veins, she finally faced the truth. What would she have to sacrifice to save her children? As the shadows surged forward, a frantic question rose in her heart: what will it cost to break free? The darkness stirred, and the air crackled with an uncertain malevolence as she awaited the answer. The shadows drew closer, their grip tightening around Sarah as the weight of Danny's words settled deep within her. The suffocating darkness pulsed, a living entity that fed off her fear and despair. She gasped, struggling to breathe as icy tendrils brushed against her skin, probing, clawing, trying to sink into her very soul. "Mommy. We need you." Danny's voice shattered her thoughts, urgency crackling through the air. It was a lifeline she clung to as she fought against the spiraling tide of shadows that threatened to consume her whole. "Stay with me," she shouted, her voice trembling. "Just hold on. I'm coming." With fierce determination, she pushed against the shadows, her body feeling like lead. Each step was a battle, the floor beneath her slick with horror. She stumbled, falling to her knees as the laughter ricocheted around her, taunting her. "Join us, Sarah," they sang, the haunting melody slithering into her ears, wrapping around her like a serpent. She pressed her palms to the floor, grounding herself. Memories of laughter, of family, ignited a fire within her. "You won't take me. Not today." With every ounce of strength she had, she rose. The flickering illumination from the remnants of light cast grotesque shadows on the walls, distorting reality itself. Shapes writhed, robbed of sanity, stretching out like grasping hands. In that moment, Sarah saw not just her children, but the various lost spirits surrounding them trapped, just like her. "You can be free," a voice whispered, dripping with venom. "All you need to do is choose." A sudden flutter of wings filled the air, making her freeze. She turned her head, and there stood a figure cloaked in darkness, its outline barely perceptible. It shifted, its body a swirling mass of despair that made her heart race. "What do you want from me?" she yelled, desperation fueling her cries. The figure stepped closer, its face concealed in shadows, but its presence radiated malevolence. "You know the cost, Sarah. Choose what you would rather lose." The shadows twitched, feeling her uncertainty, and then Danny's voice rang out again, stronger this time, filled with the innocence that once defined him. "Mommy. Don't leave us." She focused on him, pushing through the fear. "I'm here." But the shadows whispered of sacrifice, twisted images of her children intertwined with agony and shadows, the essence of what they could become if she failed to act. A whisper of anguish caught her ear. "Choose the one who goes with us, or lose them all." A chilling realization sank in. She was being asked to choose between the two, between the very lives she had sworn to protect. "No. I want tea," she shouted back, defiance surging through her veins. But the shadows pooled around her feet, climbing higher, creeping toward her heart. Their laughter crescendoed, drowning her words in waves of chilling mirth. Suddenly, she felt a hand graze against her arm. It was Lily, reaching through, her frail fingers cold and trembling. "Mommy, please." "I can't stay, I'm scared." The soft warmth of her daughter's plea shattered Sarah's heart. Should she choose Lily, her innocence veiled in fear? Or Danny, the tender-hearted boy who clung to hope? Why must it be this way? Sarah's voice cracked, tears streaming down her face. As the shadows drew closer, they whispered promises of peace and end to suffering, a release from the agony of this cursed place. Every part of her screamed against the darkness. "Enough." She breathed. No more games. Somewhere in there, amid the fear, was a truth that could melt the grip of the night. And yet, sacrifice awaits. The sinister chant swirled through the air, drowning her in doubt. What will she truly have to give up? In this relentless game of shadows, who would pay the ultimate price to save them all? A shadow lunged at her, a sharp breath against her neck. "Choose wisely," it hissed. Sarah's heart thundered as reality splintered before her, the world fading to a chilling void. In the suffocating dread, she felt time slipping away, the dire choice she must make hanging like a sword above them. In a moment, everything would change. And she realized, as the darkness closed in, her decision was entwined with an unimaginable consequence. As the shadows crept deeper, a question lingered like smoke in the air. What would she sacrifice to end this nightmare? The shadows tightened their grip, and Sarah's breath became shallow. Each heartbeat echoed like a war drum, a reminder of the inevitable choice that loomed before her. The icy tendrils wrapped tighter, sending jolts of fear through her veins. Her body felt impossibly heavy, weighed down by the torment of the decision. "Mommy," Lily's voice quivered, her tiny hand now slipping slightly away. "I don't want to go." What could Sarah do? The darkness pulsed with excitement, a predator savoring the taste of her anguish. Panic surged within her as she caught the fleeting glimpse of Danny's silhouette, desperately trying to reach her through the darkness. "Come back. Don't let go," she cried, fighting against the tide that sought to drag them all into despair. But the shadows laughed, a cruel symphony that chilled her bone. Every ounce of defiance felt like a futile effort against an inescapable fate. Suddenly, the figure cloaked in darkness shifted again, growing clearer. Its eyes found hers, deep pits of nothingness that threatened to swallow her alive. "You need to decide, Sarah," it dripped, each word like poison on her mind. "No. I will not make this choice," she roared, the sound reverberating through the cavernous void. "Choose," the figure demanded, its voice rising like thunder, shaking the very fabric of the darkness. "You are running out of time." The shadows lashed out, swirling around her like a frantic storm, and she clutched her head, overwhelmed. Visions flared in front of her, snapshots of her life flashing, birthdays, laughter, bedtime stories twisted into horrific images that haunted her sanity. What had once been joyful memories now dripped with agony, the faces of Danny and Lily distorted by despair. "What if I refuse?" she shouted defiantly, forcing her will against the encroaching nightmare. "What if I fight back?" The laughter from the shadows roared louder, a cacophony of disbelief. "You think you can resist? We know your fears. We thrive off them." The swirling mass seemed to congeal, forming shapes that darted around her, creeping into her thoughts. "Mommy!" Danny yelled, desperation dripping from his words. "Please. I don't want to lose you." At that moment, clarity hit her like a battering ram. The love for her children was a beacon, cutting through the thick fog of darkness. The shadows hesitated, sensing the shift in her resolve. "Your bond is weak," the figure shrieked, its presence shifting erratically. "You will crumble." With every ounce of faith she could muster, Sarah raised her chin, refusing to surrender. "I am stronger than your darkness. We are stronger together." The shadows recoiled slightly, as if they were burned by her conviction. Sparks of light flickered in the edges of her vision, pushing against the oppressive darkness, the weight of despair lifting just a fraction. Her children needed her, and she would not abandon them. "Mommy!" Lily cried, her voice cutting through the chaos like a knife, "We can fight. Together." With renewed determination, Sarah focused on her children, the love coiling stronger around them, pushing back against the shadows, igniting a small light. "I choose hope. I choose love." The darkness shrieked in raw fury, a wild animal cornered. Tendrils began to snap and crackle in response to her defiance, but then it surged back, as if aware of the threat she posed. "Let us see how far that light takes you," Sarah the figure snarled, shadows swirling violently, preparing to unleash their final assault. But just as the air thickened with dread, a blinding flash erupted, engulfing everything in white. And then, silence. As the brilliance faded, Sarah blinked, her head spinning. Reality twisted around her, and she gasped, realizing she was no longer in the same place. The darkness was gone, replaced by an unsettling stillness. "Mommy?" Danny's voice echoed from somewhere nearby, but there was no warmth, no shadows, just an eerie calm. "Where are we?" she whispered, dread creeping back in. The air felt heavier than before. Something in the emptiness shivered. "Do you not remember?" A soft voice echoed eerily in the vast space, lingering like a ghost. Sarah's heart skipped as she scanned her surroundings, panic surging through her veins once more. "Mommy, where did you go?" Danny's voice trembled again, the landscape around them shifting, no longer just darkness, but something far worse looming closer. She felt a chill creep down her spine as she began to realize a terrible truth. This wasn't over. What sinister presence awaited them now? Adrenaline surged through Sarah as she tried to grasp reality in this new, cold atmosphere. Where were her children? Danny's voice echoed in the abyss, yet there was a distance to it, an eerie quality that sent shivers down her spine. Uncertainty shrouded her heart when she saw a shape begin to form in the mist, a figure draped in indistinct shadows, shivering slightly, almost as if uncertain of its own presence. "Danny!" Sarah called, panic clawing its way up her throat again. "Lily! Come to me!" But only the damp silence answered. She felt a weight settle over her, a heaviness that threatened to crush her spirit, and panic flickered with false hope before her. Slowly, the indistinct figure edged closer, clarity dawning. Was it Danny? She stepped forward, heart racing, yearning for that connection, that warmth she had clung to throughout the nightmares. Just as the light shimmered across his small features, a dreadful realization struck. He resembled his former self, yet the shadows wrapped around him like a shroud, and his eyes, they were hollow, devoid of the light that once danced there. "Mommy!" He cried out, but the sound echoed strangely, wobbly and wrong. I'm scared." "Stay strong, sweetheart. I'm coming," Sarah shouted, her heart breaking as she ran toward him. But with each step, the space stretched unnaturally, threatening to swallow her with shadows that pressed hungrily at her. "Mommy!" Lily's voice broke through the silence with a soft weep. "Where am I?" Desperation surged as Sarah grasped her hands, gripping her courage with fierce intensity. "I'm here, kids. We're together. We can do this." But doubt clawed at her mind. What if they were trapped in this realm formed by shadows forever? A chilling laugh echoed around her, low and mocking. "You think you can save them? They belong to the shadows now." It reverberated through the silence, chilling her fantastical dreams of comfort into vivid nightmares. "No!" Sarah screamed, forcing herself to fight through the fear of potential reality rippling at the edge of despair. "You're wrong. I can save them." The figure that resembled her son flickered in front of her, his voice trembling. "Mommy, I want to come home." Suddenly, the shadows intensified, swirling into a tempest that drowned her words, hurling her back into the grip of despair. She could sense the malevolence lurking, but she pushed through, channeling all her love for her children into a furious beacon, an incandescent fire that screamed for life and connection. "No!" A voice, twisted with torment and malice, hissed around them. "Love is weakness. Sacrifice is all that exists here." Even as shadows began to coil tighter, Sarah's heart roared against the bated breath of desolation that pressed in. "I will never sacrifice my children. Never." With that declaration, she launched forward, summoning the remnants of her hope. The shadows screeched, recoiling as if burned. Within her heart danced a glimmery light, not of simple hope, but of sheer defiance. It pulsed, a visceral throbbing rhythm that thrummed through her body, forcing together the love she carried for her children. "Danny! Lily!" she called, reaching out against the tumultuous waves of shadow. The distance shortened, and she pushed closer, wrapping her arms around the flickering forms of her children. "Hold on to me. We'll break free together." The moment they connected, warmth flooded between them, thawing the chilling grasp of the shadows that clawed at their souls. Danny's and Lily's forms solidified, glowing faintly, hope intertwined with despair. "Trust me," Sarah whispered fiercely, and as the darkness howled like a storm brewing above them, she drew strength from a memory of laughter, their last family picnic filled with sunshine and joy. Together, they planted their feet firmly against the encroaching void, and as Sarah roared out courageously, "Your darkness will never claim my family." The shadows recoiled, writhing in direct opposition to their unified strength. Brighter and brighter, the trio radiated warmth until reality began to stabilize, the abyss tinted with hues of disbelief. Shapes morphed around them as if the house they fought against was rebuilding. "I want to go, none of us will," Sarah shouted, rallying her spirit into one fierce cry. The shadows faltered, their grip loosening, receding from the bright light they emanated. Together, they stepped into the lighthouse of their love, the warmth enveloping them. Then, there was a sudden explosion of light. In a blink, they were back in their living room, surrounded by silence, the oppressive weight of darkness lifted. The house exhaled, releasing them from its tight grip. The air felt electric, alive once more. Panting heavily, Sarah sought her children, tears streaming down her face. "Lily! Danny! Mommy?" they chorused, bewildered but safe. The haunting whispers faded, a distant echo behind them, leaving only the essence of their love. Running toward them, she enveloped them in her arms tightly, their warmth banishing the last remnants of fear flooding through her veins. She looked deep into their eyes, feeling relief wash over her like a cleansing rain. We made it together. You didn't leave us, Danny whispered, relief spilling from his lips as he nestled against her shoulder. No, I would never leave you, Sarah murmured, her heart swelling with love. The haunting shadows had retreated just whispers now, but they would never forget the sacrifice they defied. She had fought fiercely against despair and emerged victorious, armed with the strongest weapon of all, her love for her children. For they all knew, even in the depths of darkness, together they conquered, forged anew with the promise of light. And somewhere behind them, the shadows shifted and coiled, biding their time, waiting for the next flicker of fear to return. But Sarah, with Danny and Lily by her side, would always be ready to fight back, united against the dark. Remember to subscribe immediately to the channel, so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash the like button now, feed the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this heart-stopping ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support means everything.